Marcus Rodriguez had served as a royal guard for 12 years. His uniform was always pressed, his shoes always polished, and his dedication to protecting the royal family never questioned. At 34, he took pride in his work at the palace, where he earned respect from colleagues and nobles alike. However, today was different. Today was his day off, and he needed a car. The morning sun cast long shadows across the city as Marcus walked toward Premium Motors, the largest car dealership in the capital. He wore simple jeans and a plain white t-shirt, looking like any ordinary citizen. His savings account held enough money for a decent used car, something reliable to drive to work, instead of taking the crowded bus every day. The dealership gleamed with expensive vehicles displayed behind massive glass windows. Luxury cars sat like jewels under bright lights, their price tags making Marcus whistle softly. He knew these cars were beyond his budget, but he enjoyed looking at them. A man could dream, after all. As Marcus entered the showroom, the cool air conditioning hit his face. Sales representatives in sharp suits moved between customers, their smiles bright and professional. Marcus looked around, trying to catch someone's attention. Several salespeople walked past him, but none stopped to help. He stood there for 10 minutes, watching as other customers received immediate assistance. Finally, a young salesman named Trevor approached him. Trevor's suit was expensive, his hair perfectly styled, and his smile seemed forced. He looked Marcus up and down, taking in the simple clothes and worn sneakers. "Can I help you?" Trevor asked, his tone suggesting he had better things to do. "Yes, I'm looking for a reliable used car," Marcus replied politely. "Something in the $15,000 to $20,000 range?" Trevor's expression changed immediately. His professional smile faded, replaced by barely concealed irritation. "Used cars? We mostly deal with luxury vehicles here. The used section is in the back lot, but honestly, you might want to try the dealership down the street. They specialize in more affordable options." Marcus felt a sting of embarrassment, but remained calm. "I'd still like to see what you have available, please." Trevor sighed dramatically. "Fine, follow me." He led Marcus toward the back of the showroom, walking quickly as if eager to get this interaction over with. Other customers turned to look, some whispering among themselves. Marcus noticed their stares and felt his cheeks burn with shame. The used car section was poorly lit compared to the main showroom. Dust particles danced in the weak sunlight filtering through dirty windows. The cars here were older models, some showing obvious signs of wear. Trevor gestured dismissively at the vehicles. "This is what we have," he said, checking his expensive watch. "Most of these are overpriced anyway. Like I said, you'd probably find better deals elsewhere." Marcus examined a blue sedan that seemed in good condition. The price tag showed $18,000, well within his budget. He looked under the hood, checked the tires, and sat in the driver's seat. The car felt right, and he could imagine himself driving it to work each morning. "I'd like to know more about this one," Marcus said, getting out of the car. Trevor rolled his eyes. "Look, buddy, let me be honest with you. These cars are for people with serious money. You seem like a nice guy, but maybe you should start with something more ... realistic. There's a place called Budget Auto about 5 miles from here. They have cars more suited to your situation." The words hit Marcus like physical blows. Around them, other customers and staff members had stopped to watch the interaction. Some smirked, others looked uncomfortable, but no one intervened. Marcus felt the weight of their judgment, the assumption that he didn't belong in this place. "I have the money," Marcus said quietly, his voice steady despite his rising anger. Trevor laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the showroom. "Sure you do. Let me guess. You'll pay in cash?" "Look, I've been doing this for 5 years. I can tell when someone is wasting my time. You're clearly not our target customer." A woman in a designer dress nearby whispered loudly enough for Marcus to hear. "Some people just don't know their place." Her companion nodded in agreement, both looking at Marcus with disdain. The manager, a heavy-set man named Mr. Peterson, approached the group. Marcus hoped for intervention, for someone to restore professionalism to the situation. Instead, Peterson looked at Marcus with the same dismissive expression as Trevor. Is there a problem here? Peterson asked Trevor, ignoring Marcus entirely. No problem, Trevor replied. I was just explaining to this gentleman that we might not have what he's looking for. Peterson nodded approvingly. Trevor's right. We cater to a specific clientele here. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of the budget lots in town. Marcus felt the humiliation wash over him like a cold wave. These people had judged him based solely on his appearance, dismissing him without giving him a chance to prove his worth or show his money. The other customers continued to stare, some recording the interaction on their phones, no doubt finding entertainment in his embarrassment. I understand, Marcus said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. He turned and walked toward the exit, each step feeling heavier than the last. Behind him, he heard Trevor and Peterson laughing, making jokes about people who dream too big. As Marcus reached the door, he turned back one last time. The entire showroom seemed to be watching him, their faces reflecting everything from amusement to disgust. He memorized their expressions, particularly Trevor's smug grin and Peterson's satisfied nod outside. Marcus sat in his car and took deep breaths. 12 years of distinguished service. 12 years of protecting people who respected him, and yet here he was, treated like garbage because of his clothes. The humiliation burned in his chest, but beneath it, something else grew. Determination. These people had made a terrible mistake, and soon they would realize exactly who they had dismissed so carelessly. Marcus started his car and drove away. But this was far from over. He had connections they could never imagine, resources they couldn't comprehend, and most importantly, he had the truth on his side. Tomorrow would be very different indeed. Marcus arrived at the palace the next morning with his usual professionalism, but his mind kept returning to the humiliation at Premium Motors. As he took his position outside the throne room, he struggled to focus on his duties. The memory of Trevor's laugh and the manager's dismissive attitude burned in his thoughts. Prince. Alexander noticed something was wrong immediately. The young prince, only 26 years old, had always been observant and caring toward the palace staff. Unlike many royals who treated guards as invisible furniture, Alexander made it a point to know his security team personally. He approached Marcus during a quiet moment between official appointments. Marcus, you seem troubled today, Prince Alexander said, his voice filled with genuine concern. Is everything all right? Marcus hesitated. Royal guards were trained never to burden the royal family with personal problems. They were supposed to be invisible protectors, not individuals with their own struggles. But something in the prince's kind eyes encouraged honesty. That's nothing serious, Your Highness, Marcus replied, maintaining his professional posture. Just a personal matter. Prince Alexander studied his guard's face more carefully. Marcus, you've protected my family for 12 years. You've saved my life twice, and my father's life once. If something is bothering you, I want to know about it. The sincerity in the prince's voice broke down Marcus's reserve. In quiet tones, he told the story of his experience at the dealership. He described how Trevor had treated him, how the manager had dismissed him, and how the other customers had watched his humiliation like entertainment. As he spoke, he saw the prince's expression grow increasingly serious. They treated you this way simply because of your clothes. Prince Alexander asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. Yes, Your Highness. They assumed I couldn't afford anything and refused to take me seriously as a customer. Prince Alexander was quiet for several minutes, processing what he had heard. As someone who had grown up with privilege, he sometimes forgot how differently people could be treated based on appearances. But he also understood the value of good character, having seen Marcus's dedication and integrity firsthand over the years. What kind of car were you looking for? The prince asked Marcus describe the blue sedan he had examined, explaining how it would help him get to work more easily and reliably. The prince nodded thoughtfully, already forming a plan in his mind. Marcus, I have a proposition for you, Prince Alexander said. Tomorrow is Saturday and I have no official duties. Would you allow me to accompany you car shopping? Marcus looked surprised. Your Highness, I couldn't ask you to do that. It's not appropriate for royalty to involve themselves in such matters. You didn't ask? The prince replied with a slight smile. I'm offering. Besides, I'm curious to see how these salespeople conduct themselves. Consider it a learning experience for me about how ordinary citizens are treated in our kingdom." That evening, Prince Alexander called his personal secretary and requested information about premium motors. What he learned disturbed him greatly. The dealership had received several complaints about discriminatory treatment toward customers based on appearance and perceived economic status. However, nothing had been done because the dealership was profitable and well-connected politically. The prince also discovered that Premium Motors held the exclusive contract to provide vehicles for several government departments. They had grown comfortable and arrogant, believing themselves untouchable due to their connections. This information only strengthened his resolve to visit the dealership himself. On Friday night, Marcus could barely sleep. The idea of returning to the scene of his humiliation made his stomach churn, even with the prince's support. He wondered if he should call the whole thing off, but something inside him demanded justice. Not just for himself, but for everyone else who might be treated the same way. Saturday morning arrived bright and clear. Prince Alexander had chosen to dress casually in jeans and a simple polo shirt, though even his casual clothes were of obvious quality. He insisted on driving himself in an unmarked sedan from the palace fleet, one that looked expensive but bore no royal insignia. As they drove toward the dealership, Prince Alexander asked Marcus to tell him more about the specific employees involved. Marcus described Trevor's appearance and attitude in detail, as well as the manager Peterson. The prince listened carefully, memorizing every detail. "I want you to act naturally when we arrive," Prince Alexander instructed. "Don't indicate that you know me or that I'm anyone special. Let them treat us as they see fit. I want to witness their behavior firsthand." Marcus nodded, though his hands trembled slightly with nervousness. "What if they recognize you, Your Highness?" "They won't," the prince replied confidently. "I rarely appear in casual clothes publicly, and most people don't expect to see royalty at a car dealership. To them, I'll just be another customer." As they pulled into the Premium Motors parking lot, Marcus felt his heart rate increase. The same gleaming showroom stood before them, looking exactly as it had during his humiliating visit. Other customers walked in and out, most dressed in expensive clothing and carrying themselves with obvious confidence. "Remember," Prince Alexander said as they parked, "let them show their true character. Don't defend me or explain who I am. I want to see exactly how they operate." They walked toward the entrance together, Marcus feeling like he was walking toward his own execution. But beside him, Prince Alexander moved with quiet confidence, ready to witness firsthand how his subjects were being treated by businesses in his kingdom. The automatic doors opened. They stepped into the cool showroom. Several salespeople were visible, including Trevor, who stood near the luxury section, talking animatedly to a well-dressed couple. Marcus pointed him out discreetly to the prince. "That's him," Marcus whispered. "The one in the gray suit." Prince Alexander nodded, his jaw tightening slightly as he observed Trevor's animated sales pitch to the wealthy customers. The contrast between Trevor's enthusiasm now and his dismissive attitude toward Marcus would soon become crystal clear as they stood waiting to be approached. Marcus couldn't help but notice the familiar feeling of being overlooked. Several salespeople walked past them, their eyes sliding over the two men without interest. The pattern from his previous visit was beginning to repeat itself, but this time Marcus wasn't alone. This time he had someone beside him who could see the truth of what was happening. This time, justice was about to be served. For 15 minutes, Marcus and Prince Alexander stood in the showroom waiting for service. They watched as other customers received immediate attention from eager salespeople while they remained invisible. The prince observed everything with growing displeasure, seeing firsthand the discrimination Marcus had described. Finally, Trevor finished with his wealthy customers and noticed the two men waiting. His expression immediately showed the same disdain he had displayed toward Marcus before. He approached them with obvious reluctance, his professional smile completely absent. "Can I help you?" Trevor asked, his tone flat and unwelcoming. He looked at Marcus with recognition and barely concealed irritation. "You're back." "Yes," Marcus replied simply. "I brought my friend along this time." Trevor glanced at Prince Alexander dismissively. While the prince's clothes were clearly of good quality, Trevor had already decided both men were time wasters. He didn't bother to introduce himself or shake hands. Basic courtesies he extended to other customers. "Look, I thought I made it clear yesterday that we probably don't have what you're looking for," Trevor said to Marcus. "Our inventory is expensive, and I don't want to waste your time or mine." Prince Alexander stepped forward slightly. "Perhaps you could show us around anyway. We're genuinely interested in purchasing a vehicle today." Trevor's laugh was condescending. "Right. Well, if you insist on looking, the used cars are still in the back. But like I told your friend here, you might find better deals at Budget Auto down the road." As Trevor led them toward the back section, Prince Alexander noted how different the treatment was from what he had observed with other customers. There was no enthusiastic sales pitch, no attempt to understand their needs, and no basic respect for their time or presence. "This is what we have available," Trevor said, gesturing vaguely at the used cars. He immediately checked his phone, making it clear he considered this interaction beneath his attention. "Most of these are overpriced anyway." Prince Alexander examined several vehicles carefully, asking detailed questions about their features, maintenance history, and warranties. His questions were intelligent and showed genuine knowledge about automobiles. But Trevor answered with minimal effort and obvious impatience. "What about financing options?" Prince Alexander asked. Trevor snorted. "For these cars, it'd need excellent credit and a substantial down payment. Most people looking at used cars don't qualify for our premium financing programs." The assumption that they couldn't afford proper financing was exactly the kind of prejudice Prince Alexander had hoped to witness. He continued asking questions, watching as Trevor's attitude grew increasingly dismissive. "I'm particularly interested in this sedan," the prince said, indicating the same blue car Marcus had examined. "Could you tell me more about its history?" "A car," Trevor replied sarcastically. "Four wheels, an engine, seats. What more do you need to know? Look, if you're serious about buying something, you need to understand that we cater to a certain type of customer here." "What type of customer would that be?" Prince Alexander asked quietly. Trevor looked around to make sure no one else could hear, then leaned closer. "People with real money. People who belong in a place like this. I don't mean to be rude, but you guys are obviously not our target demographic." At that moment, Manager Peterson approached the group. He remembered Marcus from the previous day and looked annoyed to see him back. His expression toward Prince Alexander was equally unwelcoming. "Is there a problem here, Trevor?" Peterson asked. "No problem," Trevor replied. "I'm just explaining to these gentlemen that we might not be the right fit for their needs." Peterson nodded approvingly. "Trevor's absolutely right. We specialize in luxury vehicles and high-end service. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of the budget lots in town." Prince Alexander remained calm, but Marcus could see tension in his posture. The royal guard had never seen the prince treated with such disrespect, and it was clearly affecting him deeply. "What if we were prepared to pay cash?" Prince Alexander asked. Both Trevor and Peterson laughed openly at this suggestion. "Cash," Peterson said mockingly. "For one of our vehicles? Do you have any idea what these cars cost?" "Enlighten me, Prince," Alexander replied evenly. Trevor pointed to the blue sedan. "The car's $18,000, plus taxes, fees, and documentation charges. You're looking at over $20,000. I seriously doubt you have that kind of cash lying around." Prince Alexander reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. "Would you mind if I made a quick call to my bank to verify my account balance?" Peterson and Trevor exchanged amused glances. "Sure, go ahead," Peterson said, clearly expecting to catch them in a lie. Prince Alexander dialed a number and spoke quietly into his phone. "Yes, this is Alexander. Could you please confirm my current account balance for verification purposes?" "I need the exact amount." He paused, listening. "Thank you." He handed the phone to Peterson. "My banker would like to speak with you." Peterson took the phone skeptically. "Hello?" His expression changed dramatically as he listened. The color drained from his face, and his eyes widened in shock. Yes, ... I understand." "Thank you." He handed the phone back to Prince Alexander. With trembling hands, Trevor looked confused, not understanding what had just happened. Is everything all right? Prince Alexander asked innocently. Peterson's voice was barely a whisper. That was the royal bank of the kingdom. They confirmed you have ... They confirmed your account balances. He couldn't finish the sentence. Trevor looked between them, still not grasping the situation. What's going on? Alexander looked directly at both men. Gentlemen, I think it's time for some introductions. My name is Prince Alexander, and this is Marcus Rodriguez, one of my personal guards and a man who has served our kingdom with honor and distinction for 12 years. The silence that followed was deafening. Peterson's face went completely white, and Trevor's mouth fell open in shock. Around the showroom, other customers and staff members began to notice the commotion. Yesterday, Marcus came here as a customer looking to purchase a vehicle with his own hard-earned money. Prince Alexander continued, his voice carrying the authority of royalty. Instead of receiving the respect due to any customer, he was humiliated, dismissed, and treated like garbage because of his appearance. Peterson began stuttering apologies, but Prince Alexander held up his hand for silence. The moment of reckoning had arrived, and everyone in the dealership was about to learn a valuable lesson about respect, dignity, and the consequences of prejudice. The entire showroom fell silent as Prince Alexander's identity became clear. Customers stopped their conversations, salespeople froze in place, and even the background music seemed to fade away. Peterson and Trevor stood like statues, their faces pale with the realization of what they had done. Your Highness, Peterson stammered, dropping to one knee in the middle of the showroom. I had no idea. We didn't recognize. Please forgive us. Trevor remained standing, still in shock, unable to process that he had just insulted and dismissed a member of the royal family. Other staff members began gathering around, whispers spreading through the dealership like wildfire. Prince Alexander's voice carried across the showroom, calm, but filled with unmistakable authority. Please stand, Mr. Peterson. What I want to discuss cannot be resolved through apologies alone. Peterson struggled to his feet, his expensive suit now wrinkled, and his confidence completely shattered. Around them, customers began taking pictures and videos with their phones, recognizing the significance of what was happening. Yesterday, Marcus came here as any other citizen would, Prince Alexander continued. He had money to spend, a legitimate need for transportation, and the right to be treated with basic human dignity. Instead, your staff judged him solely on his appearance and treated him with contempt. The prince turned to address the growing crowd. This man beside me has dedicated his life to protecting our kingdom. He has risked his life countless times to keep our people safe. He deserves respect not because of his service, but because every person who walks through these doors deserves respect. Trevor finally found his voice, though it came out as a weak whisper. Your Highness, I was just doing my job. I didn't mean any disrespect. Your job, Prince Alexander replied firmly, is to serve customers regardless of their appearance or perceived wealth. Your job is to treat every person who enters this establishment with professionalism and courtesy. You failed completely in that job. A well-dressed woman from the crowd stepped forward. Your Highness, I was here yesterday and witnessed the entire incident. It was absolutely disgraceful how they treated this gentleman. She pointed at Marcus. I almost said something, but I didn't want to get involved. Other customers began speaking up, sharing their own observations from the previous day. The story spread quickly among the gathering crowd. People expressing shock and outrage at Marcus's treatment. Peterson desperately tried to regain control of the situation. Your Highness, this is all a terrible misunderstanding. We value all our customers equally. Perhaps we can discuss this privately in my office. There will be no private discussions, Prince Alexander replied. This matter involves public discrimination and the mistreatment of a valued citizen. It will be addressed publicly. The prince pulled out his phone and made another call. Yes, this is Prince Alexander. I need you to contact the media immediately. I'm at Premium Motors on 5th Street, and I have a story they'll want to cover. He paused, listening. Yes, bring the cameras. This is important. Peterson's face went from pale to green. The thought of negative publicity involving royalty would destroy his business overnight. Your Highness, please, let's discuss this reasonably. We can make this right. How do you propose to make it right? Prince Alexander asked. Can you undo the humiliation Marcus suffered? Can you take back the laughter and the dismissive comments? Can you erase the assumption that he was worthless because of his clothes? By now, a crowd of nearly 50 people had gathered in the showroom. Word was spreading on social media, and more people were arriving to witness the confrontation. Several customers had already shared videos online, and the story was beginning to trend. Marcus stood quietly beside the prince, overwhelmed by the public support he was receiving. For years, he had worked in the shadows, protecting others while remaining invisible himself. Now, suddenly, he found himself at the center of a very public moment of justice. I want to purchase that blue sedan, Prince Alexander announced loudly. Not for myself, but as a gift for Marcus Rodriguez, one of the finest men I have ever known. The crowd applauded spontaneously. Peterson quickly nodded his agreement, desperate to salvage something from the disaster. Of course, Your Highness, Peterson said. We'll prepare the paperwork immediately. No charge, of course, it would be our honor. ... No, Prince Alexander interrupted firmly. We will pay full price, plus all taxes and fees. Our Marcus deserves to own his car through legitimate purchase, not through charity or guilt. What he doesn't deserve is to be treated as less than human because of his appearance. Trevor, who had remained silent during most of the confrontation, suddenly burst into tears. The weight of his actions and their consequences finally hit him fully. I'm so sorry, he sobbed. I was wrong. I was completely wrong. The prince looked at Trevor with a mixture of disappointment and pity. Your apology should go to Marcus, not to me. And more importantly, you should apologize to every customer you've ever judged unfairly based on their appearance. As if summoned by the drama, several news crews began arriving at the dealership. Cameras and reporters pushed through the crowd, eager to capture the story of royalty confronting discrimination in a local business. Peterson realized. His nightmare was just beginning. The story would be national news within hours and premium. Motors would become synonymous with discrimination and poor customer service. His business relationships, his reputation, and possibly his entire livelihood hung in the balance. Your Highness, Peterson pleaded one final time, please tell me what I can do to fix this situation. Prince Alexander looked around the crowded showroom at the cameras beginning to roll and at Marcus standing quietly beside him. The moment had become bigger than just one man's humiliation. It had become a lesson for an entire society about dignity, respect, and the danger of judging others by their appearance. What you can do, Prince Alexander said clearly, ensuring the cameras captured every word, is learn from this experience and ensure it never happens again to anyone. The confrontation was far from over, but the message was already clear. A world where people were often judged by their clothes, their cars, or their addresses. Today would serve as a reminder that true character lies beneath the surface, and that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. The news crews had set up their equipment quickly and within minutes. The confrontation at Premium Motors was being broadcast live across the kingdom. Reporter Sarah Chen from Channel 7 News stepped forward with her microphone, addressing Prince Alexander directly. Your Highness, can you tell our viewers what brought you to this car dealership today? She asked. Prince Alexander faced the cameras confidently. I came here because one of my most trusted guards, Marcus Rodriguez, experienced discrimination and humiliation at this establishment yesterday. I wanted to witness firsthand how businesses in our kingdom treat ordinary citizens. The reporter turned to Marcus. Mr. Rodriguez, can you describe what happened to you yesterday? Marcus looked nervous about being on camera, but Prince Alexander nodded encouragingly. Kay came here looking to buy a car with my own money, Marcus said simply. I was treated like I didn't belong here, like I was wasting their time. They laughed at me and told me to go somewhere else because I didn't look like their kind of customer. The cameras captured Peterson and Trevor in the background. Both men looking miserable as their faces became associated with discrimination. On national television, Other employees watched nervously, realizing their workplace had become the center of a major scandal. Reporter Chen interviewed several customers who had witnessed the original incident. Their accounts painted a clear picture of systematic discrimination based on appearance and perceived wealth. Social media posts from the previous day began surfacing, with people sharing their own negative experiences at premium motors. Meanwhile, Prince Alexander's phone buzzed constantly with calls from palace officials, government ministers, and media outlets around the world. The story was spreading internationally, becoming a symbol of how discrimination affects people at every level of society. Peterson made one final desperate attempt to control the damage. He approached the cameras and tried to give his own statement. This was an isolated incident involving a single employee who acted against our company policies. We have always prided ourselves on excellent customer service. That's not true, interrupted an elderly man from the crowd. I brought my grandson here 3 months ago, and they treated us the same way. They said we couldn't afford their cars just because we weren't wearing expensive clothes. Other voices joined in, sharing similar stories. It became clear that Marcus's experience was not isolated, but part of a pattern of discriminatory behavior that had been going on for years. Prince Alexander listened to each story with growing concern. How many people have been made to feel unwelcome here? He asked the crowd. How many potential customers have been turned away because they didn't meet some arbitrary standard of appearance? A young woman raised her hand. I'm a teacher, and I came here 6 months ago looking for a reliable car. They barely spoke to me and kept trying to push me toward the oldest, cheapest vehicles. When I asked about newer models, they said I should be more realistic about what I could afford. The stories continued, each one adding weight to the evidence of systematic discrimination. Peterson's claims about isolated incidents became laughably inadequate as more people shared their experiences. The prince addressed the cameras again. What we're hearing today is proof that discrimination based on appearance is alive and harmful in our society. When businesses judge customers by their clothes rather than their character, they not only lose potential sales, but also damage the dignity of good people. By now, the crowd outside the dealership had grown to over 200 people. Local residents, curious onlookers, and supporters of Marcus had gathered to witness the historic confrontation. Many held signs supporting fair treatment for all customers, while others chanted slogans about equality and respect. Inside the showroom, the atmosphere was tense. Other dealership employees whispered among themselves, worried about their jobs and the future of the business. Some expressed genuine remorse for past behavior, while others seemed more concerned about the potential consequences. Trevor, still crying intermittently, approached Marcus directly. Mr. Rodriguez, I know my apology doesn't fix what I did, but I am truly sorry. I was wrong to judge you, wrong to treat you badly, and wrong to make assumptions about you. Marcus looked at the young salesman with a mixture of anger and pity. Your apology is a start, he said quietly. But the real question is whether you'll change how you treat people in the future. Prince Alexander observed this interaction with interest. What have you learned from this experience? Trevor wiped his eyes and tried to compose himself. I learned that I can't judge people by how they look or dress. I learned that respect should be given to everyone, not just people who seem wealthy. And I learned that my actions have consequences not just for me, but for the people I hurt. Prince nodded approvingly. Those are important lessons. But the real test will be whether you remember them tomorrow, next week, and next year, when you're dealing with customers who don't look like they belong in your usual clientele. As the afternoon progressed, the story continued to evolve. Social media was flooded with reactions from around the world. Many people shared their own experiences of discrimination in various businesses, while others praised Prince Alexander for standing up for ordinary citizens. The royal palace issued an official statement, supporting the prince's actions and announcing a kingdom-wide initiative to combat discrimination in customer service. The statement emphasized that all citizens deserved equal treatment regardless of their appearance, occupation, or perceived economic status. Premium Motors corporate headquarters was bombarded with calls from angry customers, potential buyers, who were canceling orders, and business partners questioning their association with the dealership. The financial impact of the scandal was immediate and severe. Peterson realized that his business was facing complete destruction. The negative publicity would drive away customers for months or even years. His staff would likely quit. His relationships with manufacturers would suffer, and his personal reputation was ruined. But beyond the business consequences, something more important was happening. The incident had sparked a broader conversation about discrimination and respect in society. People were sharing stories, examining their own behavior, demanding better treatment for everyone. As the cameras continued rolling and the crowd continued growing, it became clear that this moment would be remembered as a turning point. The humiliation of one royal guard had become a lesson for an entire kingdom, about the importance of treating every person with dignity and respect. 3 weeks after the incident at Premium Motors, the ripple effects were still being felt throughout the kingdom and beyond. The story had become international news, inspiring similar conversations about discrimination and customer service in countries around the world. Marcus Rodriguez found himself in an unexpected position. As no longer just another anonymous guard, he had become a symbol of dignity in the face of discrimination. Letters of support arrived at the palace daily, many from people sharing their own similar experiences and thanking him for bringing attention to the issue. The blue sedan sat in Marcus's driveway, a beautiful reminder of how dramatically his life had changed. Prince Alexander had indeed purchased it at full price, insisting that Marcus deserved to own it through legitimate means rather than charity. Every morning, Marcus drove to work with a sense of pride he had never felt before. Premium Motors had undergone massive changes. Peterson had been forced to resign as manager, facing not only public humiliation but also legal investigations into the dealership's discriminatory practices. Several major lawsuits had been filed by customers who had experienced similar treatment over the years. Trevor, surprisingly, had remained with the company under new management. The young salesman had become an advocate for change within the organization, volunteering to help develop new customer service training programs. His genuine remorse and commitment to improvement had impressed many people, including Marcus himself. The new management at Premium Motors implemented comprehensive reforms. All employees underwent mandatory training on respectful customer service, regardless of customer appearance or perceived wealth. The dealership also established a customer advocacy program, ensuring that complaints about discrimination would be taken seriously and addressed immediately. More importantly, the incident had sparked kingdom-wide changes. The royal government announced new regulations requiring businesses to demonstrate equal treatment of all customers. Regular inspections would be conducted, and companies found guilty of systematic discrimination would face significant penalties. Prince Alexander used his platform to continue advocating for social change. He established the Dignity for All initiative, a program that worked with businesses across the kingdom to ensure fair treatment of customers, regardless of their background or appearance. The prince made regular, unannounced visits to various establishments, always dressed casually to test how ordinary citizens were treated. The media coverage of Marcus's story had an unexpected benefit. Hundreds of people came forward to share positive stories about exceptional customer service they had received from businesses that truly valued all customers equally. These businesses saw increased patronage and became models for others to follow. Marcus received offers for speaking engagements, book deals, and even job opportunities in private security firms. However, he chose to remain as a royal guard, finding deep satisfaction in his service to the kingdom. The experience had given him a new perspective on his work and a stronger connection to the people he protected. The prince often reflected on how a simple, car shopping trip had revealed so much about society's hidden problems. He realized that his royal status usually shielded him from experiencing discrimination, making Marcus's story a valuable lesson in understanding his subjects' daily challenges. 1 month after the incident, Prince Alexander and Marcus returned to Premium Motors for a follow-up visit. This time, they were greeted warmly by the new management team, who had implemented comprehensive changes based on the lessons learned from their public humiliation. The new manager, Maria Santos, personally welcomed them at the entrance. "Highness, Mr. Rodriguez, welcome back to Premium Motors. We're honored by your visit and grateful for the opportunity to show you how we've improved. The transformation was remarkable. Every customer in the showroom was receiving attentive, respectful service regardless of their appearance. The staff had been retrained to focus on customer needs rather than making assumptions about purchasing power. Trevor approached them nervously. Having requested the opportunity to speak with Marcus personally, "Mr. Rodriguez, I know I can never undo what I did to you, but I wanted you to see that I've truly changed. I've been working with community organizations, helping them understand how businesses can serve everyone better." Marcus shook Trevor's hand, a gesture that surprised many observers. "People can change, Trevor. What matters is that you learn from your mistakes and are helping others avoid making the same ones." The visit was documented by the same news crew that had covered the original confrontation. This time, the story was about redemption, growth, and positive change. The follow-up coverage showed how one incident of injustice had catalyzed meaningful improvements throughout society. As they prepared to leave the dealership, Prince Alexander addressed the staff one final time. "What happened here 3 weeks ago was unfortunate, but your response has been exemplary. You've shown that businesses can change, learn, and become better. I hope other companies will follow your example." Outside the dealership, a small crowd had gathered, including many of the same people who had supported Marcus during the original incident. They applauded as the prince and Marcus emerged, celebrating not just the resolution of one man's humiliation, but the broader social progress it had inspired. Marcus looked at his car in the parking lot, then at the prince who had stood beside him when it mattered most. The vehicle was more than transportation now, was a symbol of dignity restored and justice served. "Your Highness," Marcus said as they walked to their cars, "I never expected that buying a car would change so many lives." Prince Alexander smiled. Sometimes the smallest acts of injustice reveal the biggest opportunities for positive change. Your courage in facing discrimination has helped countless others who might have suffered similar treatment. As they drove away from Premium Motors, both men reflected on the journey from humiliation to justice. Marcus had learned that he was not alone in facing discrimination, and that speaking up could create change beyond his own situation. Prince Alexander had gained a deeper understanding of his subjects' experiences and a renewed commitment to using his privilege to protect those who might otherwise go unheard. The story of the royal guard and the prince became a legend in the kingdom, passed down as an example of how dignity, courage, and justice could triumph over prejudice and discrimination. It reminded everyone that true character is not measured by appearance or wealth, but by how we treat others, especially those who seem different from ourselves. Marcus continued his service as a royal guard, but now with the knowledge that his worth was recognized not just by the royal family, but by an entire kingdom. Every morning, as he drove his blue sedan to the palace, he carried with him the satisfaction of knowing that his moment of humiliation had become a catalyst for lasting positive change in society. The incident at Premium Motors proved that sometimes the most powerful battles for justice begin not with grand gestures or political movements, but with ordinary people demanding the basic respect that every human being deserves.